Welcome back to another great episode of Deac2Deac. In this episode, I had a chance to sit down and talk with former Wake football player Dr. Lewis Frazier. Dr. Frazier talks about the amount of adversity he had to overcome just to become an emergency room physician. He also talks about being a part of the 2006 ACC Championship team and much, much more. Don't forget to subscribe and follow your favorite podcast, and go Deacs. Oh man, so Dr. Frazier, how's it going, man?
I am hanging in there, doing a lot better than last year. How about we say that?
Oh, we're gonna jump all into that and what you went through. But for a Deacon Nation that may not be quite familiar with you, let's kind of go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the Clearwater, Florida days. What was it like growing up in Clearwater, Florida?
So, people sometimes do not believe it, but where I grew up in Clearwater, Florida, was definitely the hood. I grew up in a neighborhood called Greenwood, and sometimes it was like so bad where if a black and a white person were in a car together, the police would just stop them because they thought a drug deal was going down. I still remember the morning when my cousin got shot after winning a basketball game. The opposing team shot him a block away from his house. And I still remember when we went to go, console my aunt, I could see his body adjacent from the house. Like he was literally a block away from the house. I remember walking through the projects as a kid and seeing a gang knock down this woman's door and basically beat her up in her kitchen. I had a father who was a alcoholic, and so sometimes I did not know what version of my dad I would ever have when coming home. Sometimes I had the loving version of my dad that would lift me up and have me fly because he was 6'9", so he could just pick me up and fly me around the house. Or I could have the dad that could punch a hole through the wall because he was so angry and intoxicated. And then I also, people probably won't believe this part either, I struggled with reading, and so I had to teach myself how to read. I would take the worksheets that the teachers threw away, and I still remember I would save up my money and Xerox them at our little corner store, and I would get enough worksheets, the Xerox to teach a class. And so that's the way I taught 25 students, imaginary students, and while teaching them, I was kind of teaching myself how to improve my grammar and learn how to read.
How did seeing all of that impact you as a person growing up in Clearwater during that time?
It was definitely hard, but I think I didn't know any different. But I just knew I had a very strong mother, and my dad always set the rules. Once those street lights come on at nighttime, you get your butt in the house. And I followed those rules. And I guess I didn't truly know until probably once I left my elementary school and went to my middle school. I think that's when I started seeing a different side, because they ended up busing me. And this is something what they used to do back during almost the Jim Crow days, where they used to bus the little black children to a different county. Yep. So that way they can have diversity. And so that's kind of what they did with us. They put a bunch of us in a van and they drove us, my middle school was probably an hour and 15 minutes away from home. And I still remember my mom was like, "Boy, don't you miss that bus, because I got to get to work. I'm not going to drive you to school." So once I started going there and I started interacting with those people, I was like, I think my neighborhood's a little bit different than some of these other people. But that's when you're in it, you don't really see it until you get to see a different version. You're like, oh, you don't have cops just knocking down your door and trying to do a drug raid. I remember when we were just sitting at home, we were just watching TV. We were probably watching Jeopardy or something, and all of a sudden you hear this explosion go off, and they were doing a drug raid next door. And I was like when you heard that big boom, we all hit the floor. We're like, "What? Jesus, help us!" And we're like, "It ain't even our house. It ain't even our house." So again, once you start seeing a different version, you're like, "Oh." And once I say it out loud, I'm like, dang, I really did go through some stuff. And I guess I didn't think about it like at the time. Like at the time when I was in it, I was just like, oh, this is just kind of normal. I guess everyone, has a dad punching holes through walls. Everyone sees someone get, shot or beat up. Like it's just normal. But now I'm like, yeah, that ain't normal for everybody.
Yeah. So with all of that going on in that environment, how did you get introduced to sports?
Great question. So football came up, I want to say I was in the 4th grade. And because I've always been really tall and thick, as the children say. And so I remember I went and tried out for the Greenwood Panthers because my dad was like, all right, he needs like a little sports outlet or something. He needs to just go. And so I remember, oh no, actually, it wasn't only that. My dad took me to my brother's football game at Clearwater High School. And I remember I sat there watching him play football. And I was like, wow, this seems really cool. And this is the embarrassing part. It wasn't because they were hitting each other. I still remember when they broke their huddle, they went out in the shape of a tornado. Like they did a little spiral and then they went to the line because they were like the Clearwater Tornadoes.
Yeah.
I still remember I was like, I think I want to play this sport.
That's what it was. It was the breaking of the huddle. That's what.
And I still remember I went out for my first day and they were like, go out in a formation. I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, run and try to catch the ball. And here I am. I just run and I try to catch the ball. And immediately they knew and I knew I wasn't supposed to be trying to catch the ball. The ball went everywhere. They were like, yeah, you offensive lineman. And so they put me in offensive line and they tried to do a little bit of D-line. And I still remember that season because I was, I want to say I was about, I think I was 10. I ended up being the MVP that season, offensive lineman.
Wow.
That's when I fell in love with it. I was like, oh, wow. I was like, I got the biggest trophy on the team for doing my job. And I played one more year in the 5th grade. And then that puberty thing hit. And so I would have went from a mighty JV Mighty Might all the way up to like, I think it was midgets. Then was it Pee-wees or midgets? I forgot how they did it in Pop Warner. But basically it would have shot me up to the oldest age group. And I was like 11 years old. I was like, I can't play with 16-year-olds. These dudes got chest hair. Like, so I took a pause through middle school and then I picked it back up in the 9th grade.
That's an interesting journey because, I think of around 12 was when I was too big. At 12, I was told I was too big to play. And I think the weight limit at the time was 135. And you're right. I chose to move up and to play with those older guys, but we're not going to get into it. It's not about my career. We're going to talk about what happened to me when I did that. We're not going to get into it.
I still remember trying to cut weight because like my first year I was all right. That second year they were like, you starting again. That thickness is starting to catch on. And so I still remember, I mean, I love my coaching sport. I do not condone this at all. But I still remember they would put the trash bag on me and have me like run around the track or drive me around in the car just so I could drop enough weight. And I still remember they would give me that Snickers bar once I made weight. Oh my God. I miss those days though. That's back when it was like all innocent. Like you just played the sport just to play it. You ain't have to be perfect at it.
Yeah. Now, what Deacon Nation may not know is not only did you play football, but you are also great at wrestling. When did you get into wrestling? How did that happen?
So I'm trying to think. I just was always fascinated by the sport. Like whenever it would like pop up on ESPN, I was like, oh, dang, they just beating each other up. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. And then so 9th grade, I needed something to do in between football seasons because, you had the fall and the spring, and it was just like you needed something to fill the gap. And so I would do wrestling and track. And I just remember they said they needed a heavyweight. They didn't have a heavyweight at all. And I just was like, okay, whatever, I'll just show up and do it. And then I still remember I had no one to wrestle with because I was so big. And so, because I was the 275 or the heavyweight. And then I would be sitting there wrestling like the little 105 dude. And then I think they had fun. They did it because they think they could like, they just want to try to beat up the big guy. But I would always like, like throwing them, or sometimes they got me. And the thing is, I learned how to wrestle like a lightweight versus a heavyweight. So whenever I like really started wrestling with big dudes, I was like shooting on them and trying to grab their legs. And like these dudes would be like, what the bleep is this dude doing? Like, we don't do this stuff. We throw each other. But I mean, I surprised a lot of them. And I still remember like one day we didn't have anybody I could practice with. And my coach, oh, bless his heart, he told me like we were practicing some move and I had him down on the ground and I rolled across him and I heard I was like, and all of a sudden he was like, oh, I broke his ribs. But I loved it. I qualified for I took 1 year off once we got a new coach. We kind of butt heads. Then I came back and like we had an understanding. And so I qualified for state. And I still remember when I was at regionals, like trying to wrestle, because I lost my first match and I had to win, I think it was 4 in a row to qualify. And there's one picture that I have where they're holding my hand up after I won and my mouth is like full of blood. And that was one of my favorite pictures. It was just something about wrestling where I knew, yes, it's a team sport, but I knew like if I mess up, it's me and not like I can't blame like one of my teammates. It's just me and that dude out there. And or I got to be fair, sometimes there were girls. I never wrestled one, but there were girl wrestlers. So this is 2021. I'm trying to be inclusive.
Yeah. So now you also were part of the track team. So you're this 3-sport star. So what events did you participate in track?
Well, it was not the 100-meter dash. I'll tell you that. It was shot put and discus. Those I weren't like so good at, and it was mainly because we didn't have a coach. It was like basically they got the big dudes and they're like, just throw. And occasionally I would throw well, occasionally I didn't, but it still gave me, more time to work out where I'm just not sitting at home doing nothing and just playing video games. Kind of like the pandemic.
So with those 3 sports, I'm pretty sure you had options in terms of what you were going to do after high school. So as you're being recruited, first, what was it about football that made you decide that's what you're going to do at the next level? And then kind of talk about being recruited and what was it about Wake Forest that made you decide that's where I want to be?
And so that's the thing. Like when I was playing, and I had this whole, I still have this kind of thing. Sometimes I don't realize how good I am at something until like someone points it out. And that's kind of what football was. Like I was just playing and I was a guard. I still remember Holt was one of my coaches and his son played. And like, I think one day Holt was just like, dude, you're like actually good. And like these recruiters are looking at you as well. Cause he was a year above me. And I was like, they ain't looking at me. And then I remember my brother and my cousin, they started saying it too. They're like, you're going to get recruited. And I was like, what do y'all mean recruited? And I'm like, I think this was before the days of Google. I think I was like on yahoo.com, like, what does it mean to be recruited? And then, and then I still remember, I think my first letter was from Stanford. And they were like, hey, they do that like formal little letter. I was like,
Yep.
Oh, and I still remember I was in class. I think it was it trigonometry? I think it was trig. And I remember I was like just sitting there and no lie, like a counselor from the office, like, Lewis, you have mail from Harvard. Everyone like stopped and it was like a package. And I was like, okay, thanks. And like, I still remember, this girl, Pam, she looked over, Pam was like, you get mail from Harvard? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. And that's when I knew something. I was like, oh, okay, something's really taking off. And so like, it just automatically became football. Like, wrestling and track were just kind of like a side gig, but it was like football. I was like, dang, football's kind of cool. Especially if they were like telling me what they would offer. And I still remember Coach Lobo, the offensive line coach at that time, I was just at home and I had just got off the phone with Princeton. Like, I mean, it had to be probably 5 minutes between phone calls because Princeton was like, oh, we'll offer you. They're like, we can't do a full scholarship, but we could do a like needs-based package. And with that, I think it was like $5,000 a semester they would charge me. And even then, like the way I grew up, my mom couldn't afford $10,000 a year.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't even had a house if she was paying for my college. And so I got on the phone with Wake, and I still remember, oh, this is so embarrassing. But Coach Lobo was like, hey, I'm the offensive line coach from Wake Forest University. And, I was like, Wake Forest University? Where's Wake Forest? And he was like, Winston-Salem, or Winston-Salem. He just stopped at Winston-Salem. And I was like, okay, Winston-Salem. And I was like, oh, the place where the witches were hung? He was so silent. And then he was like, no, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I was like, oh, the tobacco place. I was like, I promise my GPA ain't made up. I promise you my grades ain't fake. I promise you I'm smarter than I sound right now. I promise you. And so I started like doing research on Wake. And then the thing, because I already knew since the sixth grade that I wanted to go into medicine. And so I was like, I really wanted to go to a school that had a medical school attached to it. And I was like, okay, Wake checks those boxes. And it was like, I remember I got on my first, it was my one and only recruiting trip I went on. Like, when I got on that plane for the first time, I was just like, all right, this is new. This is a new experience. And then when we landed, I was like, whoa, is the ground on fire? And it was like, I had never seen leaves change because I'm from Florida. Like, our leaves go from like green to dead. Like, they might turn orange, but like in Clearwater, it's like you got palm trees, you got like any of those evergreens, it's just like boom, bam, like they're just dead. And I was like, whoa, there's seasons here. So they already got me on the seasons. I was like, just look, like the whole time we were like driving, I'm just looking at the trees. I was like, oh yeah. Oh, Winston-Salem, okay, yep. And then I saw the campus, and I was like, "Dang, this is a really awesome campus!" Like I thought it was so pretty. I love nature, and I garden and all that stuff. And like when I saw the campus, I was like, "Man, it's like this place is beautiful." I love like the walking trails and everything. And then I started meeting like some of the players and everything, and the coaches. I was like, "Okay, this seems, legit." And then I met Coach Grove and like how he, talked about he does value education. And the other thing I also appreciated, he valued the Sunday off so that we could still go to church and all that stuff. So my family loved that aspect. And then they snuck me into the medical school and I got to see the cadaver lab. And like, they really like show him he's into medicine, just show him the lab. And like, I was just like, what? And I still remember the smell of like the formaldehyde there. I was like, wow, I gotta go here. And like, it was my one, and I think I flew home.
Wait a minute, Did you just say it was the smell of the formaldehyde that got you? That's what got you? I just want to make sure Deacon Nation heard that correctly, because we might need to adjust our recruiting practice if that's what's getting them. I'm just trying to, I just want to make sure I heard you right.
I loved biology so much. Like the dissections in high school, I loved them. Like I remember we had our rat dissection and I got like 100% on the test. Like I named every part of like anything she pointed out was like, yep, I know what that is. I know what it is. And that's the thing I loved about anatomy. Like when we were doing gross anatomy, I loved that in medical school. So yeah, it sounds weird when you say it out loud. It almost sounds like I might be like Dexter, but I promise I'm not. I don't have like plastic tarps all over the place dissecting stuff.
So I have to ask, how does a kid growing up in the projects, Clearwater, Florida, dealing with all the things you had to deal with, where did this love from medicine come from?
Yeah, so it kind of turns back to the like when I was playing school in my room, because my dad used to break down restaurants, and so he would bring home equipment sometimes. And there was a time he brought home a chalkboard and a whiteboard, and that kind of got me in like the realm of like just always kind of being engrossed in school. And then I fell in love with gardening as well. And so like I saw like how plants and animals interact, and I was like, oh, I think I really like biology. And then I started getting I always loved pets. Like I always had pets growing up. And so I like realized, I was like, I don't know, I just saw I was like gravitating towards like the living person. Like at one point I thought I was gonna be a veterinarian. And then at one point it kind of shifted to medicine. And that happened when fifth grade is kind of how it started. When we were graduating from fifth grade, they had us do a Time magazine cover, and you had to draw yourself as the person of the year. And I remember my aunt had breast cancer and she survived it. And then I was like, I'm gonna draw myself as a doctor finding the cure of the cancer. Emergency medicine's a different stretch than that, but still, I help people out. But that's how it started. And then in the sixth grade, I was taking an earth space science test, and I still remember Mr. L. Frank handed my test back, and I had made 100% on it. And he was like, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Because I was still holding on to that whole. I was a teacher because I was teaching in the class, in my imaginary classroom. Yeah. He was like, instead of, and this is how he phrased. He's like, "I think you should not sell yourself short. Not saying teaching is not hard, but he's like, I think you should think about being Dr. Frazier." And that was in the sixth grade, and I was like, Dr. Frazier, that actually has a really good. I was like, I could be Mr. Frazier, or I could be Dr. Frazier. Let's see how this doctor thing works out. Yeah. And like, even at that point, that was the first time, like the sixth grade was probably the first time I truly started making like really good grades. Like in elementary school, I still remember, I think it was third grade reading, I made a D 6 weeks, and I was just like, I don't think this academic thing gonna pan out. But again, honestly, it was once they removed me from my environment to that middle school is when I started seeing like a different side of things. Like, oh, if I'm not distracted, or like if I have like the nurturing and coddling, or the push, or like the people behind me to kind of say, actually, you can do these things, I probably would have never even thought of it. And like when that teacher first looked at me, he was like, you can actually be what you set your mind to. And I was like, oh. I was like, you kind of remind me of my parents or my grandma. Like my grandma always said that. She always used to say, when I was a kid, she was like, boy, go get those white people brains. And I was like, I didn't know what that meant, but I knew what she basically was like, go get that education.
Yep.
Like, go get that education. She's like, baby, get that education. Mm-hmm. And like before, like when my dad was dying, my mom even, there was like after my dad had died, my mom told me, I remember it was rough in high school, and we'll get to that at some point. And I was just like, Mom, I think I'm gonna drop out. I was like, they make fun of me there. Like I don't fit in. They always call me like Uncle Tom or a switch out because, I was like the one black boy in all the honors classes. And she was just like, your dad, only thing he wanted you to do was graduate from high school. Just because he did not get that chance. Because the way he grew up in Georgia, he was basically, their family was like the 21st century version of like a sharecropper, basically. And so they lived close to a person's farm. They would work on the farm. And like his dad pulled him out of school. I think he made it to probably the 4th or 5th grade. And then he had to just start working. And so he never got the chance to have an education. So it's like all that stuff together is kind of like what kind of drove me. And I was like, oh, medicine. Who would have thought?
That's cool. My degree. So you get to Wake, and I want to ask you this. Did you see Wake Forest as being that perfect blend of high-level athletics as well as top-notch education all in one opportunity? Did you see that at Wake?
So I will say, how do I phrase this? The academics, yes. With football, like, because I remember when we started, it was like, it was kind of like a rough patch, but basketball was always like, when I was there, basketball was always banging. Like that's Chris Paul era, all that stuff.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And all of a sudden it was like, when like we just, football snapped, and all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah. I was like, here we are. Because I still remember that was one of the things I loved when I was being recruited too. They showed me like all the previous bowl games and stuff and the trophies. I was like, okay, at least I'm going to a school that can make it to a bowl game.
Yeah.
And then once we started doing it, I was like, oh, bleep. But I still remember though, when I showed up, the academic situation at Wake is so renowned and like ingrained in the students. I remember I showed up, they were like, what I say? I still remember counselors, they were like, this is how big of a nerd I am. I came with my whole 4 years planned out. I already had the summer classes I was going to take. I was like, no, I'm going to be pre-med. And they're like, an athlete cannot take 2 4-hour classes together. They're like, we'll give you one science. Because they're like, I understand where they come from. I'm sure a lot of athletes say I'm going to be pre-med, but then it don't work out so well. So they don't want you to end up with like an F average on your first semester.
Exactly.
So
because pre-med and preseason camp don't go together. They don't go together. They sound like it, but that's kind of, they rough to put together. I can tell you that.
Well, I'll tell you what, that first semester, I made a 3.7 and nobody ain't questioned me ever since.
Yeah, that's one way to shut people up is you knock out a 3-point anything and you pretty much are good to go. So you get to Wake, you go through that freshman year, you're redshirted. I want to talk about 2005. Was an interesting year because it started out pretty good, and then you had the injury, right? How did you overcome that injury? You had some torn ligaments in the knee. How did you overcome that to bounce back?
It was a lot of prayer and Julie Griffin. Like Julie, I would go to her office in Student Athlete Services, and I would just sit there. And I remember there was like one day I was looking at the practice field, and I had my crutches and everything. And I was like, Julie, I don't think I'm ever going to play again. Like, that's how low I had got. It's just like, Lewis, you just have to have faith and believe. Just push yourself. Trust me. And I had great trainers as well. And they were just like, Lewis, we see this all the time. Just trust me. You follow what we're telling you, and it's going to work out. And it was hard because I remember that summer I had went down to Atlanta and trained with John Abadi at like this NFL complex, and they were seeing me do like my agilities, and that's the biggest thing, that I've always had good footwork, and I mean, I'm a dancer as well, so I guess that is what had made me such a great, I feel like, left tackle. And so when they saw me at the camp, they're like, dang, he got better footwork than some of these wide receivers. And seriously, they were like watching me on like the ladders. And I'm just like, this is just a dance move right here. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden I get to that Maryland game, and for it all to be taken away, because I honestly, I was like, maybe I could do the NFL for a little bit, and then I could come back to medicine. And then once I tore it, I was like, oh, snap. I might not even be able to play football again. Because like that was the first time because I feel like we all jammed a finger in the helmet or something, but to lose the ligaments, I was like, dang. I was like, this might be over. But as they say, some people don't like the saying, but things seem to work out for a reason, because that semester I ended up with a 4.0. And then because of that 4.0 and all the time I got to put in the class instead of football, the flash forward, that's what had got me into medical school, because they wrote an article when we were doing well with football, getting ready to head to the Orange Bowl and win the ACC Championship. It was like 4.0 guard lacks nastiness. And it was because of that 4.0 I made when I tore my ACL. That gets on the desk of a dean at the medical school. That secretary ends up emailing me and saying, do you know we have the early assurance program where you could get in without taking the MCAT? And I was like, no, I did not know this. And then then she wrote me back, and we also could offer you the vice president scholarship if you can get accepted, and we'll give you a full scholarship and a $5,000 grant each year. And I was like, all right, how do I was like, what's the deadline? Wow. I got that email that Monday, because the article came out the week before. I got that email that Monday. The application was due by Friday. I had to get letters of recommendation, my transcripts. I ran across that campus so fast. I was like, I ain't got to take the MCAT. But no, it honestly was. And Joe Haynes, Athletes in Action, he had a big part of it too, because he pushed me to go out to California that year for one of their the big mission trips. And so we like worked in inner city Compton, and thankfully, and again, I would not have gotten to go on that trip either, because if I did not tear my ACL, I probably would have just stayed and kept training throughout the summer and take classes. But I don't know, it truly did work out. I mean, it stunk going through it, but it worked out.
So just so we can kind of put together that time frame, you go from 2005, you're starting off the season, you're doing great. You have this season-ending injury, and you easily could have put your head down and said, I'm done with this. but instead, because of the support system that was there, you were able to not only bounce back from the injury, but all academic, all ACC honors. I don't want to forget that. And you pretty much secured an opportunity for the next phase of your life during this period of dealing with this injury.
Yep.
How did that feel to have not only had the adversity, but overcame it on the other side even stronger than before you went into it?
Wow, you say it like that.
I'm just, because sometimes we just, as an athlete, you're trained to just keep moving. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And we often don't stop and really take a look at the things that we've accomplished and the help and support along the way. And so, just want to use this opportunity as a way to show the support system that people have at Wake for what they want to do. But you got to put the work in, and you did.
And you said something very key there, as athletes, and also because I feel like athletes are some very driven people. We're always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And that's kind of the way I was doing it. Like, I knew what the end goal was going to be. Like my adopted dad, he always has us try to like put down what's your 1-year goal, your 3-year goal, and your 5-year goal. And I remember I did that my senior year of high school, and I still remember like my 5-year. I was like, it was like my junior year, because that would have got me to senior year of college. I was like, I'm going to be an academic All-American. I'm going to be accepted to medical school. And so I was always driven. So even with that hiccup in the road, I was like, okay, let's figure out what the game plan is going to be. And like I said, like Joe Haynes, Julie Griffin, like they helped get me through it. And like the trainers, like whenever I was down, I was like, okay, get through rehab day number 1, get through, week 1, get through month, let's get through the surgery, like let's get through rehab again. And I just kept trucking. And then it finally probably clicked once I became a senior, and they had me talk to some of the donors, and it was like, tell your story kind of like I'm doing now. And I was just sitting there telling it, and then I was like, whoa. I was like, I did this? Even my mom has to remind me some days. She's like if I have like a bad patient interaction or a bad outcome, my mom's like, boy, you realize what you've been through, right? Like, pull your head out your bleep. I love I'm censoring myself.
Let me tell you, I know you're doing it on your own. I don't have to push a button. And the interesting is when mama starts talking.
Yep.
That's when you really get the real. Mama has no reason to sugarcoat it for you.
At all. Between my white mama and my black mama, they will, if they ever get on something, I know I'm like, oh, yep, they're speaking into me right now. Yep. Yeah. There's no reason, like they don't have to protect me anymore.
So you overcome the adversity, and you're coming out ahead. And you coming back for the 2006 season, magical season, right?
We had no idea what it was going to be, but like I was terrified going into that season, because at that point I was coming back from California for the mission trip, and I still remember I had that brace on my leg, and that was the first time I had like geared up in forever. And occasionally like my MCL was like a little lax, so like my knee would give every now and then, so I didn't trust it. And I was 3rd string left tackle to start with, and then based off of practices I got up to 2nd string, so I was like, all right, at least I know I'm gonna get in the game. And then Matt Brim was the starting left guard at the time. He broke his hand before our first game, and then Coach Lobo was like, Frazier, I'm gonna move you over to guard. And I was like, dang, I ain't played guard since high school. But I was like, okay, it'll somehow work out. And then it was like, as we kept winning, and thank God for Steve Justice, especially, I forgot which team it was we played. Was it UVA? I'm trying to remember who it was. Like they had this dude who could like bench press 500 pounds. And like, I never threw weight around like that. Like you get me to get 350 and I was good. I was like, I'm not hurting these elbows and these shoulders to show, like impress somebody. And so like, I still remember me and Steve had to double team that dude, but it was like, our line worked so well together. And I mean, we were talking about this earlier, like the game that just happened this past weekend. Like, if you don't have an offensive line, there might be problems. So like going into that season, I had no idea if even I would touch the field again. And then for me to start all games at the left guard position, and then just seeing how well we did until, we met our match from that orange team that I don't want to speak of.
Yeah, we don't even have to talk about that.
Nope,
we ain't gonna talk about that.
No, but I tell you what, that they deserve that win, though. I'll tell you what, they got it.
You guys were a special group, though. You're a special group, and what you did moved the program forward. And so I want to talk about that year, that ACC Championship year. And while, you didn't think in the beginning of the season you would be there, but at some point it had to click that, hey, we're really good. We got a shot. When was that? When was that moment when you realized, you know what? We got a shot at winning this thing?
When we were 5-0 going into Clemson.
When
we were 5-0 going to Clemson, I was like, oh, I think we got this. And then when we lost, we still had hope. Like, it was different because, like, back when I played, during my redshirt freshman year, and then, redshirt sophomore year a little bit till I got hurt, it was like when we had lost, sometimes it seemed like the air had been taken out from the sail. Does that make sense? Like, it's like our momentum had just died. But it was something about, even once we lost to Clemson, we came back as like a unit, even the coaching staff, and we're just like, we're still in it. And then once we kept winning, we were like, wait, we had a horrible loss to Clemson, and now we're like still winning. And like, I think it was something about once that loss happened, and like our morale did not change, and like we had such good leadership in the seniors as well, and we're just like, you know what, we're gonna go. And I still remember like when we went into the Maryland game, like I ain't have no fear at all. I was like, you know what, screw up Maryland. And I remember it was like muddy and wet. And my favorite thing was when I cut block. Speaking of, I was going to cut block you one day. I'm going to make it happen.
Here we go. No need to do that. At my age, if you cut block me, Dr. Frazier, you will be responsible for putting me back together because I'm going to pieces. You think your ligaments went down? My ligaments.
I just remember I got up and I was like covered in the red and green from the grass because it was so muddy, and I felt like a warrior. And one of my favorite moments from that season, going back to my home state, and we got to embarrass FSU 30-0.
Yeah.
To this day, I want that on my tombstone. Like, I was there when we beat FSU 30-0. Little old Wake Forest stumped FSU. It's like growing up a Floridian, that's all you heard. FSU, University of Florida, like that's all you heard. And like I had a desire to go to FSU, but they overlooked me because I guess I didn't like go to like the camps to be seen and all that stuff. But thankfully Wake took a shot on me. But I don't know, that year, truly, back to the season though, that year was truly amazing. And honestly, I think it was just because we never lost momentum after that like bad loss. And it was just like, I mean, I still remember bursting into tears at the ACC Championship when we won. And like Steve Justice had to like grab me and drag me up to the line. I was crying so hard.
Why? What made that moment so emotional for you?
Because it's like we saw where we were heading. And then like once we got to the ACC Championship, I think there was still, I don't think if you're truly not nervous about something when you're going into it, I think you're just being delusional. And I think we were just like, okay, we got, just focus. We've trained for this. And then like we weren't scoring. Thank God for Swank and that magic leg. But yeah. I'm telling you, like when we had finally achieved what we were like dreaming to do, that it just all hit me. I was like, we made it. And I was like, I mean, it was like you're like running a marathon and you get to like that, you could like see the finish line. It was like, oh, and then like when they started throwing the oranges, oh my God, I was like, it was like an out of body experience, and the fact that I was part of a team that got to go through that is unbelievable and so special. Like that is an experience that many football players, at least the collegiate level, have not experienced. And that was like one of the most magical things on the planet. And for like Wake to go there, it was like 30 years.
Yeah, the 70 team was the last team. Yeah, the 1970 team.
And like even hearing that too, like people kept saying like the first ACC champion. I was like, what? I was a part of this team.
Yeah.
It seems like another life sometimes. Like, because now that I'm a doctor, I'm like, I played football. Oh my God.
Now, I gotta ask you this. So you guys you win the ACC championship game. Was the NFL not on your radar?
That's funny. I think I thought about it for a little bit. And I remember I got a questionnaire from, I think it was the Jets? I think it was the Jets. I have it somewhere in one of these, in one of my filing cabinets. And I don't know, I was just looking at it. I was like, okay. I was like, maybe I'll like try out. But the thing that kind of stopped me from doing it though, I had already been accepted to medical school. So I was like,
oh, okay.
And I had always wanted to, medicine had always came before, like my academics had always came before sports. Like, and don't get me wrong, some days I am working and I like look at a certain patient, I'm like, the league would probably been a lot better than this. But no, like it crossed my mind a few times, but it was just really hard because my brother told me he's like, just follow your heart, just do whatever you think is right. One of my cousins, he was like, dude, postpone that medical school, just go to the league. But like I didn't know how that was gonna work because I was like, if I say no to Wake Forest Medical School and they're offering me early assurance and a full scholarship, it's like, what guarantee do I have that that's still gonna be on the table if I went to the league? So I was like, I'm gonna go with the medicine, but it crossed my mind.
So just to kind of put it in perspective, so you come to Wake Forest, you're doing well, you're developing, you have a very serious injury that ends your season. Now, since then, you were accepted into medical school, got some money for medical school, and had a great season, academic all ACC, and won an ACC championship. I think that was a great rebound from tearing ligaments in your knee. And so now I want to fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
And I want to ask you this. So you started getting involved at Wake and you started coming back and you had a very unique experience that unfortunately a lot of us don't get, but I think we're working on it now, is you had a chance to talk to the people that actually funded your scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
It was, I guess it was like my way of saying thank you. And hopefully, those people would continue to donate to Wake Forest. And it even led to me help found a scholarship as well there. Cause I feel like when you start hearing our stories and like putting a face to the name or like, cause I think they let them know like, hey, we've given this money to this athlete. And then when they could hear my story, cause like these people didn't know my story. I just happened to get the scholarship that they, gave to me. And then when they could like start hearing like, oh my God, like this kid couldn't read. Like he got made fun of, because he was like the only Black person in honors classes. His dad died when he was in the 7th grade. Like when they start hearing all that stuff, I feel like that just makes people want to give more. But it's like just my way of just saying thank you, because like you're not just, throwing cash to the wind, like you're actually changing some of these people's lives. Uh-oh. Ooh, I'm gonna pause on that one. Let me take a sip of water, boy. Got me about to tear up over here.
No, it's all right, because again, thinking about your journey, this, because I get where you come from. Initially, my real early years, we started off a place called Washington Park Projects in Fitch Street back in my hometown of Laurinburg. And, it's no poverty like being out in the country. when you broke and bored with nothing to do, but think about how broke you are.
Yep.
That's tough. That rural poverty is different. At least
Mhm.
if you're in a metropolitan area, a museum or two may be free.
Mm-hmm.
But to go from that kid who dealt with things at home, came from an environment that was not necessarily conducive to learning, and you taught yourself to read, to becoming Dr. Frazier.
Yeah, my mom, she to this day, and my cousins, they'll sometimes make fun of me because they're like, "You remember Lewis when you?" Or my nickname is June June, so they'd be like,
Wait, whoa. We're not going to skip over that. We're not going to skip over that.
"So
What
yeah,
was that again?
yeah,
I
I'm
didn't hear that.
a
Your nickname is what?
June June or June Bug. Like I'm one of those
Ooh,
June bugs.
Junebug is better. Come
Yep,
on now.
yep.
Junebug is what it is. No, June. You from the South. Junebug.
Yeah, like June June was my nickname of June Bug. Like
Yeah.
I had two of them. And so they'd be like, June, you remember like if you made like a B or a C on something, you would lock yourself in the room and you would like master it so that way whenever you took a test again, like that wouldn't happen. And I was like, I mean, I wasn't that crazy about it. Yeah, I was. Like if I ever made something that was an A, I would like lock myself in the room. Like I still remember like spelling tests. I would like sit there and like meditate on the words so that way I would just sit there. And like my mom would quiz me and I would make sure I got all 20 words right. Like I'd be like, we need to do this one more time. The test is them all. And like she would quiz me again and I'll get them all right. Like I cannot believe I don't know, I was just so driven. Like once I knew I was able to do it, because like I said, elementary school, it wasn't like that way. But once I got to middle school and like these teachers started supporting me, I was like, okay, I got this. Like when I started seeing the grades reflect the work I was putting in, I was like, all right. I was like, Junebug could make it.
Go, Junebug, go. So now when I see the Junebug challenge, it's not going to be a dance move. I'm going to think about the Junebug challenge is to teach yourself to read and to become a doctor.
Yep.
That's the real Junebug challenge. So, but I want to ask you this. So you're an emergency physician now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But what was tougher? Was med school tougher than preseason camp? That's one question.
Okay.
Second part of that is, did your academic experience at Wake help prepare you for medical school?
To answer that one first, definitely. Like Wake Forest did not give out A's. Like you had to earn your grades at Wake Forest. I still remember being on some teammates made fun of me so much sometimes. I still remember writing research papers in a tiny little notebook on the way to a game because I was like, this paper's due on Monday.
Yeah.
I got to get this done. Like and like that definitely going into medical school, it definitely prepared me for it. And this is the thing, a lot of my medical colleagues are not going to like this comment coming out my mouth, but
here we go.
Medical school is easy compared to being pre-med and football. Like I had all the time in the world just to dedicate myself straight to like just studying. Like with football, I still remember at workouts, man, I would be there with flashcards at 6 a.m. in the morning. In between sets, I'm sitting there trying to memorize molecules. I'm sitting here trying to memorize structures and stuff. I was like, chemical reactions. I'm just like, okay. Oh, I'm up, power clean. Ha, ha. Like, it was hands down being pre-med with football and training camp. That was way harder than medical school.
But here's another question: was it worth it? When you walk into your office and people address you as Dr. Frazier, does that make it worth it?
It truly does. And I still remember, like, when I did residency at Vandy, we typically just called each other, like, by our first name. They're like, like the nurses addressed us as Frazier or Lewis, because we didn't want to seem like we were, like above them or something. And I remember, I love her to that Miss Magnolia. She's this nice Southern Black lady. She was like, I am not calling you Lewis. I am calling you Dr. Frazier. You earned that degree. And I was like, thank you. I was like, she always called me Dr. Frazier. And then when I started working out at Cookville, those nurses never ever called me Frazier or Lewis. They always like, Dr. Frazier. I was like, and it all started hitting me. I was like, oh my God. And so now, like at my job now, like it doesn't matter what people call me, but it's so cool when I get to walk in the room and I get to address people. I'm like, hello, I'm Dr. Frazier. And like, I write my name on the board. I like show them the workup that they're about to get. And it's actually helped out so much that like me just kind of being in that role as a doctor, they have made me now like the what are we calling like the site satisfaction coach now. And so that way I can like get to educate other people on how like to do bedside manner and interact with patients. And so like that's a little spin-off that I've had now since being a doctor. But it's really cool, like the hard work, like in that moment, don't get me wrong, in that moment using those flashcards 6 a.m. in the morning, I probably had like some of those nights I had 2 or 3 hours of sleep. I wish like this 35-year-old version of me could like go back in time and be like, just keep going. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Like, you know, I'm chugging a smoothie and eating like an omelet on the way to my biology class at 8 a.m. after workouts. Like, it was crazy, but it truly was. Like, I mean, and like, you know, for like current students that are there now, like it'll pay off. You just gotta keep put your one step at a time, I'd say. One foot in the other, as long as you keep going in the right direction.
I got it. So I want to ask you this then. Uh, what did it mean to your mom for you to be Dr. Frazier? Not just, you know, won an ACC championship, all of those things, but what does it mean? And the reason why I'm asking is because once a week, since I got my first job out of college, my mom calls my office and asks for Mr. Smith. Now, I've always answered that call. I was like, Mom, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? And I did not realize that for her and that generation, it meant that much. There was no, you know, they didn't work jobs where they had a phone, let alone an office space at all. And so what did that mean to them?
You know, like, you know, with my blindside family and my biological family, it definitely meant the world. And I think I didn't realize it until it was one day. I was in I think I was was I graduating from? No, it was like once I had graduated from medical school. My mom called me. I was like probably in the middle of like my intern year or something, and my mom was like, you know, one of my coworkers looked at me today and said, Miss Pat, you must be so proud of him. And then she was like, you have a son that's a doctor and that made it. And she said, I know my baby made it out. I'm proud of him. Like she told me what she said, and I was like, I was like speechless. I was like, I guess, you know, I was always working toward it to not only help her, but I guess I never thought about like how proud it would make her. And so it's like whenever she has like a doctor's appointment and she can't understand what's going on, and she's like, I still remember when I was a chief resident, she actually called, she talked to the ER doctor. She was like, my son's a chief resident at Vanderbilt. I need you to talk to him. And I still remember the doctor got on the phone. He was like, I heard you're a chief resident. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I kind of know what I'm talking about. So just tell me what's going on. And I was able to like, you know, water it down and explain to her. She's like, oh, okay. But like my white mama would do it too. She's like, my son was a chief resident for Vanderbilt. Can you please explain to him what you just said? And like, they'll send me like the report or something. I'm like, okay, so this is what it means. And it's like, it's neat. I never thought like how proud it would make them sometimes until like that conversation my mom had with me. I was like, oh, I was like, wow. Like you are just as, I was like, trust me, I'm happy that I've made it this far, but it's like made me even happier that I made her like proud, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And that's what I'm saying. As student athletes, I think we all have that moment of, you know, doing that thing that makes our parents proud. It's not about the audit, the crowd. It's not about the coaches or ourselves. It's about mom and dad doing what they did. And even though it might not have been perfect, it was the best they could do to get us to that point and to see the look on their face.
Yep.
And I always love that. So emergency room physician, what is that environment like? Because I picture ER, all these different things. Am I off? What is it really? Is everybody getting an EKG when they come in? Like, that's all I know is if you give somebody an EKG, they good. I don't even know what that is, but whatever it is fixing everybody that comes on ER. I want to know, what is that environment really like?
You got me laughing so hard over here because it's so true. I think people might not know a thing about medicine, but if that doctor said your EKG look good, you're like,
yeah,
whoa.
Yeah, don't even know it's a bunch of other tests.
Yep, but that EKG,
that EKG, man, please. When my mom had a stroke, I don't know what else they did, but I told her, make sure you get an EKG done because that's gonna be the truth teller. And she was like, "Well, no. What about an MRI? No."
You're like that EKG, mom. That's real. It's so true. So if you come in for like dizziness, lightheadedness, chest pain, shortness of breath, abdominal pain, especially if it's like kind of upper and we can't delineate whether it's your chest or your abdomen, you typically get an EKG. But honestly, being in the ER, one of the things that drove me into emergency medicine, like when I was studying for my first board exam, I realized I liked everything I was studying. Like, it wasn't just like, once I got to cardiology, I was like, oh, let me just focus. I only want to focus on the heart. Like, I don't want to focus on anything else. But I realized, like, dang, I think I kind of like all this stuff. And so I was like, I think that's the kind of doctor I want to be. And I was like, what specialties will still allow me to do procedures where I'm not just like if I'm like in a clinic on my own, like as a family medicine doctor, they can do some stuff, especially like some of the rural docs, they do a lot of stuff on their own, but a lot of them also refer out to people. But I always thought it'd be cool, putting breathing tubes into people, putting central lines in. Like, I always loved the procedures. And so that's what kind of drove me into emergency medicine. And then the other part of it is I always wanted to be that person. I mean, knock on wood, it has not happened yet, but when they say, is there a doctor on the plane or is there a doctor at the restaurant? Like, yeah. I want to be that person that can stand up and be like, oh, I can help you out because I know emergency medicine. I'm not just like, a podiatrist, or I'm not just a psychiatrist. Like, I'm not saying those people can't do it, but I wanted to be the expert in terms of if there's an emergency, people look at me versus like being like, what do I do? Like, that's the thing. Yeah. And so like going into work, it's definitely stressful, but it's also interesting at the same time because I never know what I'm gonna get. Like, it could just be a very slow day where you see like maybe a handful of patients and nothing's too crazy. Or it could be like one case I had recently, someone like around my age, they ended up coming in with chest pain and their EKG did not look good.
I knew it was coming. Yep. I knew somewhere I was going to hear it.
Yep.
See, now I can call my mama and tell her that the EKG is real. Go ahead.
Yep.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. And like the EKG did not look good. Their troponin came back. That's like a heart enzyme. It was like 300% higher than it should be. And ended up needing to go to the cath lab. That patient ended up coding or losing their pulse. And I'm, again, around my age. And that person ended up needing a pacemaker. And it was like, I had no idea I was going to walk into that day. Like, I couldn't have like prepped for that. Like, that's the thing that I love about emergency medicine is like our training allows us to walk into a situation and try our best to either rule out an emergency or at least tell you these are the things that aren't happening to you right now. I don't think there's something that's going to kill you like in the near future, but you need to follow up. And that's the kind of stuff, that's the like drive that I love. And then when I get to do procedures too, it's just amazing. The thing is, I guess we'll talk about it now. I'm just gonna bring it up anyway. Like, so you could not have told me last year was gonna happen. Like, like during my training, you could not have said, like, I always used to joke, and this is the thing I've learned, I better stop joking sometimes. I remember in medical school and residency, we all just be sitting around joking. I was like, we all worried about like strokes, heart attacks. I was like, it's gonna be some mutated cold virus that's gonna take us out. And I remember I just always joked around. I was like, it's gonna be some weird old virus. I was like, I was.
See, here we go. Here we
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
You spreading stuff like that.
Yeah, like be careful what you say. And then all of a sudden that year started happening. And I was like, what is going on? Like when you see it go from China, then it went to India, then it went to Italy.
Yeah.
And then when it finally hit New York, we're like, okay, it ain't gonna be that bad. Like it ain't gonna be like Italy. And then when it like turned into Italy, I was like, what? So what was that, like mid-March or near the end of March when it really started getting revved up here in the States? And I was just like, this is made up. I was like, this is made like I don't think. I mean, I could try to find my textbook over there, but I don't think there's a chapter in emergency medicine called pandemic. like it does not prep you mentally for what you're going through.
Wow.
It does not prep you physically what you're going through, and like the patients that you see. Like I still remember when like before last year, honestly, I think I wore an N95, and that's like the respirator mask that helps filter out the particles a little bit better than just like a regular surgical mask. Mm-hmm. I had not worn an N95 probably, but like a handful of times before last year. And now it's like the norm. Like like when I used to put breathing tubes in, I used to do what we call direct laryngoscopy or DLing, and that's basically where you just physically take a blade with no video camera on it, and you look yourself and you see the airway and you put the tube in. Like I've gone solely to video now because you don't want to expose your risk or increase your risk to COVID by people's droplets and their respiratory droplets and all that stuff. And so I usually wear a PAPR now. That's like the hazmat suit that you see people, like I've never worn that in my career. And then last year I started wearing it, like especially if I'm putting a breathing tube in, I put that on for, there's only one intubation over the past year. I did not have that on. Like it has changed dramatically. But the thing is, though last year sucked, like especially psychologically it sucked, and some of the stuff I saw sucked, I still wouldn't trade it.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
You're that passionate about it.
Yep. Because I think my biggest thing is, all right, take a breath, try not to get teary. My biggest thing is like seeing either that patient recover or seeing a family member say, you saved my family member's life. That's the part that's like, it's cool, like having the title of a doctor, but when you've actually got to intervene and help someone's outcome. Like I still remember I had a patient when I was at Cookville, and it's like one of those ones where it's like, we need a doctor. He was carrying his daughter in, like she was near death, and it was all because of like diabetes, and she had DKA, which is when your sugars get so high and your body can't regulate it. And so she was like limp. I had to put a central line in, pump her full of fluid, start her on insulin. And I saw his mother probably a month later, and it was like one of those ones where it's like, can you explain this to my son? Because she's like, I'm not getting all the information, and I feel like he would like to know. And I got on the phone and I like started talking, and he was like, is this Dr. Frazier? And I was like, yeah. He's like, I was there and my daughter came in unresponsive. I was the guy who carried her in. He's like, I just want to thank you for saving her life. And I was like,
wow.
Thank you. You took the word right out of my mouth. That's exactly, I was like, so that's the part, because I know I'm going to see crap. I'm going to get, talked down to by sometimes consultants. It just happens. But being able to actually help a patient who truly needs help and being able to hopefully save someone's life, that's the thing that I feel like drove me into medicine, and that's what kept me in the emergency medicine field. And like, if that aspect of medicine was like to be taken away, I honestly don't think I could do it. It's the part of like actually helping people is that what drives me to, put my scrubs on every day. When I go to work, I have like a mask on, goggles. I wear a little skull cap now, so that way, if someone blows COVID on my head, or just to remind myself, like, don't like touch my face when I'm at work. Yeah. And I mean, like that, if I would not do it if I couldn't help people. And I think that's the thing I think honestly is what probably had me pick medicine over the NFL is like the ability to help people. Like, don't get me wrong, I do think, NFL players, they help us distract ourselves from what's going on in our lives. So they help in a way as well. But me physically getting to help someone, especially with their health, or I can like change someone's, trajectory. And if they're like a drug addict, I can help them get like help and recover. Or, if they're depressed and thinking about harming themselves, we can like get them the right treatment and get them in a psychiatric unit. And hopefully they won't have those thoughts anymore. So I don't know. I'm blabbering, but as you can tell, I really enjoy emergency medicine. It has its ups and it has its downs, but at the core, helping people and like hopefully having the ability to save a life is the thing that I think out of all the training I've have, that's the thing that I think is the coolest.
Well, Dr. Frazier, thank you so much, Junebug, for sharing your. Oh, it was coming. Oh, I'm not gonna let this go. I'm not gonna let this. Just wait until this comes out.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
But I think you have a wonderful story. I mean, to go from teaching yourself to read to literally saving lives every day. That's special. That's special. And what you had to do to go get it, you earned it. And I appreciate you doing it and just being you. And thank you for taking the time to be a part of this, man. I appreciate you sharing your story, especially in the midst of everything, taking the time. I mean, I'm pretty sure you could be doing an EKG somewhere right now. But instead, you took the time to come and talk to Deacon Nation and share your journey. And any words that do you have any words for current student athletes that may be facing some challenges, maybe an injury, maybe adjusting to the academic rigors of being at Wake Forest and balancing their sport? What insight, what advice would you offer the current student athletes of Wake right now?
I would say definitely have some kind of goal. And that was the biggest thing for me. Mine was I know I wanted to be an academic All-American, and I knew I wanted to get to medical school. And those were like the big goals. And then even with the injury, it kind of sidetracked a little bit, because I got sad over that and everything. And it is okay to go through those emotions of like, I feel defeated or I feel sad, but just don't live in it. Like take each day at a time. And like it's like one foot in front of the other. I think they said it in like one of my favorite like comic book TV shows. She's like, put one foot in the other, as long as it's heading to your goal. It doesn't matter how fast you get there, long as you're heading in the right direction. And I think that's truly the thing I would say. There are going to be speed bumps along the way, but long as you have that end goal in mind, whether it is to go be a professional athlete at some point, whether it is to become a teacher, whether it is to become a comedian like some people, like long as you head towards that goal, I think you'll work out just fine.